guys, my name is Gabby. Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be filming my February wrap-up. In the month of February, I read a total of 9 books, and that was 5 physical books and 4 audiobooks. And yeah, it's been a pretty great reading month, so let's First book I read this month, Pieces of Me by Melanie Hansen, and this book is actually a male-male romance that follows these 2 boys named Scott and Rylan who become stepbrothers in high school when both of their parents, I think it's Scott's mom and Rylan's dad, decide to get married. This book is really hard to rate for me because I loved the first half of the book so much, and the second half of the book felt like a completely different book from the first half. The first half of this book, in my opinion, was like 5 out of 5 stars, amazing, oh my god, so good. And then the second half was like maybe 2 or 1 star, so completely different. The first half of this book kind of reminded me of like Forbidden in a way, almost in the sense that having to take care of all of their younger siblings, you know, and like this book takes place in like a trailer park setting. The second half of this book flashes forward 6 years, and the description of this book on Goodreads actually says, overall, this book was kind of difficult to rate for me because I love the first half so much, but I had to give it 3 out of 5 stars at the end of the day because that second half was so disappointing. Like, I can't even tell you how disappointed I was, and the characters just felt completely different from who they were in the first half. I don't know if I'm going to be reading the second book in this series because I hated the second half so much. If this rating was just based off of the first half alone, it would easily be a new favorite of mine to be a 5 out of 5, so. The second book I read this month was Behind Her Eyes by Sarah Pinborough. This is honestly one of the best thrillers I have ever read, and that ending was unbelievable, and I still can't even get over it. I'm still so shook over it. This is easily my favorite book of the month and my favorite book of 2017 so far. This book is just freaking unbelievable. It's so good. It basically follows this girl named Louise who is hooking up with this married man named David, and then she unintentionally becomes really good friends with his wife Adele, and it's just this very sick and twisted love triangle that takes place between these 3 characters. All 3 of them, David, Louise, and Adele, are all so fucked up in their own ways that you can't even begin to imagine just how fucked up and insane they are until closer to the end of the story. And this ending is honestly one of the best endings I think I've ever read about in a book. Some people are kind of confused by it, but if you reread it a couple times, it changes everything you thought you knew about the book, and I can just imagine reading this a second time is probably so crazy because like it changes everything you thought you knew about these characters and everything about this book. It's so amazing and powerful, and you'll never predict the ending, I promise. When you read this, you will not be able to predict the way this ends. It's just so phenomenal. I definitely recommend reading this book. Just give it a shot. If you're still confused at the end, come talk to me. We can talk about it. I'll clarify whatever you're confused about because I just think this ending is genius and it's one of the best plot twists I've ever heard in all my life. And wow, props to this author. I'll read anything she writes now. Holy shit. I can't stop thinking about this book. It was so good. And obviously I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read this month was Keep Quiet by Lisa Scottoline. This is actually the first book I've read from Lisa Scottoline. I know she has like 10 million novels. I listened to the audiobook for this and I just checked it out from my library randomly. It follows this guy named Jake and his son Ryan who are involved in a hit-and-run car accident. The guy Jake lets his son Ryan drive the car even though he's like underage and doesn't have a driver's license, and while they're driving that night they hit this girl that's like on a run, and so Jake like panics obviously, but he doesn't want to like ruin his son's future, so in a very intense moment he just decides to leave the scene of the accident, and the son Ryan like does not want to leave, you know, and he thinks that he should be punished for what he did, you know, and then the dad is just like looking out for him, and he just doesn't want his son's future to be destroyed over this one incident that's technically his fault because he let his son drive. And so it's very interesting, this premise, I think, and this book is surprisingly so intense. Like, there's so many interesting plot points that happen in this, and I was on the edge of my seat the whole time thinking like they're gonna get caught, and there's so much shit that happens in this book with the police and blackmail and plot twists, and it's just so good. I really enjoyed it, and I was very impressed with the storyline and how much I actually liked it, so I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. Right, the 4th book I read this month was Good Boy by Serena Bowen and Elle Kennedy, and this book is the first book in a new series, but it does follow up with the Him duology that they wrote together that followed Jamie and Wes, the hockey players. This book follows Jamie's sister, Jess, and Wes's teammate Blake at their wedding. But honestly, I only read this book because it has glimpses of Jamie and Wes's wedding and like their lives after the him duology, because unfortunately for this book itself, I wasn't really a huge fan of Jess and Blake together, and I honestly feel like Blake is way too immature for my taste. You know, he's just one of those typical jock guys who thinks it's like funny to send her dick pics even if she doesn't want them, and like just kind of like harasses her all the time, and he's just way too aggressive and too immature, and I just didn't really care for the main romance of the story, which is kind of a bummer. I love these two authors so much. Like, the him duology is literally one of my favorite books ever, and Jamie and Wes are two of my most loved characters ever. So of course I wanted to read this, and of course I loved seeing Jamie and Wes in this book. I just thought that they were so cute. We got to see, you know, their wedding, which was so cute, and we got to see like tons of moments at their hockey games, like Jamie going and supporting Wes, and that made this book 100% worth it. Like, Jamie and Wes are so cute, and I still ended up giving this book 3 out of 5 stars, even though I wasn't a huge fan of the main romance happening. But I'm not sure if I'm gonna read the next book in this series, because if it's not involving Jamie and Wes at all, I don't know if I'll be interested, to be honest, so we'll see. I still am campaigning for a 3rd book in the him duology, because I still need a 3rd book of Jamie and Wes, so if that could happen, that would be great. Alright, the 5th book I read this month was I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid. This is honestly one of the weirdest, creepiest books I've ever read. I think follows this guy named Jake and his girlfriend, who's never named, even though it's told from her point of view, as they visit his family on this farm in the middle of nowhere, and some weird shit starts happening with his family, and we get these weird flashbacks of some weird shit that's happened in her life, like creepy things that have happened to her growing up. This book held a very creepy atmosphere throughout the majority of the story. Like, there was a lot of times it just gave me chills, kind of, because of how eerie and weird it was. The scenes when they're on the farm with Jake's family and there's like dead animals and his parents, like the way they behave is just kind of weird and creepy. And when they visit Jake's old high school that's kind of like abandoned, it's just very creepy. So the ending of this book was so confusing, and I reread it like 3 different times, and I still don't really understand what is going on at the end of this book, and it apparently has one of those like crazy mind-blowing plot twists that make you think, and I love endings like that. Like, trust me, I'm all for endings like that, but I genuinely do not understand what happened at the end of this book. It was so crazy, confusing. I don't even know. If you've read this book and you understand the ending, I would love to talk about it, because I don't understand and I want to understand. So if anybody has any idea about the ending of this book, then please, let's talk about it. For now, I'm giving this 2.5 out of 5 stars, because the ending was just like so confusing and I have no idea what I just read. But the rest of the book was pretty good, and it was really creepy, and it held my interest for sure, but unfortunately I wasn't very impressed with the ending for now. The 6th book I read this month was Holding Up the Universe by Jennifer Neven. This book follows this girl named Libby, who's the fattest teen in America. I think she said at one point she weighed like 600 pounds, and these are like her words. This isn't me like calling her fat. This is like her inner dialogue. And then it follows this boy named Jack, who can't recognize faces. Like, he just has this disorder where he can't recognize the faces of his own family members and his friends and everyone around him, even in his daily life. He can't like recognize specific facial features. So basically this book is a love story between these 2 characters, and did not care for this one. Really didn't like Jennifer Neven's first debut novel, All the Bright Places. I'm not really sure what I was expecting going into this one. Like, I had low expectations going in since I hated her first book so much. I honestly only read this because the library had the audiobook, and I was like, why not? You know, it's a popular young adult book right now, I'll just give it a shot. But unfortunately, I did not like this story. I did not feel any chemistry between these 2 characters. I feel like they were just forced together because they both have these really depressing issues going on, and why not force a love story out of this situation? I don't like how this fat girl rodeo was like a major plot point in the beginning of this book, and I just feel like that's so juvenile and so immature, and I know that's like the point, but honestly, it was just ridiculous to read about these boys in their high school trying to grab onto the fat girls and hang on as long as they possibly can, like a fat girl rodeo. It's bullshit, and it's disgusting that this is even a plot point in a book, you know? These 2 characters felt so one-dimensional, like there was nothing more to them other than the fact that Libby has weight problems, and it's all she talks about. All her inner thoughts are about her weight problems and how she's not going to let it affect her anymore, but it's all she ever thinks about still. And, you know, judging other characters based off of their weight. And then Jack, there's nothing more to his character other than him struggling with this issue that he can't recognize people's faces. And it's like, there's literally nothing more to their characters though. Like, there's no character development at all. Their relationship and their romance starts off with Jack humiliating her in public and harassing her. Like, he joins in on this fat girl rodeo thing and just latches onto her in public, like humiliating her in front of everyone, and that's how their supposed romance starts out. And I'm supposed to be like, oh, cute. No, couldn't stand either of these characters really. The romance never worked for me. It always felt very forced. I can't stand. I didn't like this book. I couldn't think of one thing that I liked about this book, so I gave it 1 star. The 7th book I read this month was It Was Always You by a collection of authors. This is written by 7 different authors, and it's actually a collection of 7 different short stories about male-male romances where their friendships turned into romance. So I've been reading this book on and off for like 4 months now, and I finally finished it. I started it in November, and I've just kind of been reading it whenever I have free time because it is like over 500 pages. Okay, I mean, I know it's 7 short stories, so it's not that intimidating, but it's still like, whoa. And this book was really cute for the most part. I did have a couple of short stories that I didn't really care for. My favorite out of all of these short stories by far was Perfect Catch, the one that followed Troy and Calvin, because their camping scenario totally reminded me of Brokeback Mountain, and I just thought they were so cute, and so that one was by far my favorite, and it's the last story in this. So some of my other favorites in this collection are Rough Edges, The Unexpected Turn, and The Sweetest Goodbye. And the short stories that I didn't really care for were Dare You To, Leaning Into Love, and Please Don't Go. I thought those were just, like, the ones that I didn't like, I just didn't really care for the characters, or I didn't really feel the romance, or I didn't connect the way I wanted to. I mean, by far, Perfect Catch was my favorite out of all of these, and I would love to see a full novel on Troy and Calvin, but I would definitely recommend this book to lovers of male-male romances, and I think it's a totally awesome collection of short stories. Right, the 8th book I read this month was Next Year for Sure by Zoe Leigh Peterson. Thank you to Scribner for sending me a copy of this book. Hella appreciate it. This book is about a couple named Chris and Catherine, and they've been together for 9 years when Chris gets a crush on this girl named Emily, and then Catherine encourages him to pursue his crush and like date her while he's dating Catherine still. Usually very intrigued by open relationships in books. I think that they're very fascinating, you know, when a couple is open to the idea of dating other people while they're together. It's very interesting, you know, so that was definitely something that intrigued me about this book, but this book is so fucking boring. It's so boring. The writing style drives me freaking nuts, okay? There's no quotation marks when the characters are talking. It just like says their dialogue and then comma and then it says Chris says. It's so frustrating after a while. Like, I understand that this is supposed to be a very like artistic style of writing or whatever, and maybe this is just a like it's not you, it's me definitely situation, because maybe some people really enjoy this style of writing, but I could not stand it, and I find it so frustrating when I'm just trying to like invest myself in this story, and the writing style is so awkward and chunky, and like there's no quotation mark, and it's just all very the storyline just moves so fast. Like, the very first conversation we see between Chris and Catherine is about Emily, and it's like we have no idea what their relationship is like and who these characters are before we're talking about him dating another girl. Unfortunately, I ended up giving this book 1 star as well. And the last book I've read this month is P.S. I Like You by Casey West, and this book follows a girl named Lily who's in high school, and she's a songwriter who starts exchanging notes and letters with a mysterious boy in her chemistry class by like leaving notes under the desk. So cute. And this is actually my second time reading a Cassie West book. The first one I read was The Distance Between Us, and I read it a couple years ago, and I really enjoyed it, but for some reason I haven't picked up any of her other books. I don't know why, but for some reason going into this I was expecting this book to be just another like bullshit young adult insta-love ridiculous cliche story, you know. I was just expecting not to like it for some reason, but I loved it. It was just so cute and fluffy. It was predictable and cheesy, but it worked for this story. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but it just worked. It was such a perfect combination of like cuteness but like humor, and it honestly kind of felt like Morgan Matson's writing style. Like, if you like Morgan Matson, I definitely think you would enjoy this book as well. It just had that like great warm feeling. Like, this is exactly what I'm looking for in a young adult contemporary romance, and it's definitely not insta-love. It's definitely a slow burn romance, which I really appreciated. It was like falling in love with each other through these letters that they were sending anonymously to each other, you know? It kind of reminded me of Attachments by Rainbow Rowell in that way. It was kind of fun, like, trying to figure out who was sending her the letters, even though I did predict it, like, right away. I mean, this book definitely has that predictability. Like, you can figure out who it is right away, and you can figure out where it's going and what's gonna happen, but it's still a fun ride, and it's just very cute. This book keeps a very fast pace, and it has a good couple of little plot twists thrown in there, so I was definitely impressed by this book. I actually used to be a songwriter when I was in high school, and I play guitar just like Lily does in this book, so I found her to be super relatable, and like the way that she's so incredibly awkward during these social situations with her best friend, I loved it. I loved her character so much, and I related to her so much. I feel like this is one of those characters that I could be like, that was me in high school. I loved her friendship with her best friend Isabel, and I loved her big family. You know, she's like one of 4 kids. So I just really enjoyed every aspect of Lily's story, and I just really appreciate this book, and I'm definitely going to be reading more by this author. I don't know why, I just expected it to not be that great, even though I have read one of her books before and I liked it. So I ended up giving this book 4 out of 5 stars, and I really enjoyed it. Those are all of the books that I read in February. It's been quite an interesting month. I read a few books that I really loved, and 2 that I like really hated, a couple that were just like mediocre, and I just read a lot of different mood material this month. And oh my god, you guys, this month it's been snowing so much. Like at the beginning of February, the college campus was closed for a week straight, and so that's probably why I got in so much reading. It's because we were snowed in for a week, and now it's literally snowing again. Like, I'm gonna kill somebody. It's snowing right now outside my window, and it's like, it's almost March. Like, tomorrow's March. Can the snow stop, please? Okay. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and please let me know, what were your favorite books you read in the month of February? How many books did you read this month? What was your least favorite book? Let's talk about it in the comments. And have you read any of these books that I've mentioned in my video? And what are your thoughts on these books? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? I would love to know. And yeah, I will see you guys next time. Lots of snow this month, and yeah. As they visit his family on this oh my god, I can't say the word rural, no, fuck it, I'm not saying that word. Okay,